protect women, draw in to the challenges, particularly for young people, and then end with some really positive things about what we can all be doing. So, some of these things you'll know, but they're hard facts that need to be reiterated again and again so we really are aware of them. There are some 281 million international migrants, with women and girls comprising approximately half of them. People move across international borders for many reasons: to pursue opportunities in life, to study, to develop careers, and to be with their families. And others are driven to move because of poverty, political instability, insecurity, and violence. Migration is gendered. Laws, policies, and practices have a disproportionate impact on women, and many situations increase those women's risk of abuse and exploitation. And a lot of those women, they'll be very reluctant to seek help and protection from state authorities for fear of being arrested and deportation. Evidence of structural oppression of black, minoritized, and migrant women, or the risk of contact with the criminal justice system, and I'm going to say that about the UK first, is very clear in the briefest look at official data. So, for example, in 2021, women and girls from those groups were overrepresented at all stages of the criminal justice system. In 2022, black women were 4 times more likely as white women to be arrested. And in the prisons, we have evidence that 14.7% of the remanded admissions of women to prison were black women. And so those figures reveal racism laid on top of misogyny, stigmatization of people traveling from different countries, and religious discrimination. And based on what we know, structural oppression is endemic in multiple overlapping spheres of black women's lives experiences, which include education, protection from violence, protection from modern slavery, human trafficking, housing, welfare, health, social control, and immigration. So the less they can participate effectively in interactions with the state authorities, exercise their rights fully, and thrive, there is a greater risk that they will become involved in criminalisation. And girls, particularly from ethnic minority groups, right, particularly the black communities, they are very much overrepresented in the criminal justice system. So statistical evidence in the US and Canada, and I tried to bear out some from Canada as well, just to, make it even, show the disproportionate number of black girls being arrested, detained, found guilty, and imprisoned to sentences that were completely inconsistent with their white counterparts. So we have a lot of research around um, people coming from the Caribbean countries, from other black countries, and lots of research about why some of this might happen. And there was so much I could present it here, but I wanted to pull out something particularly about Caribbean migration to the United Kingdom, but also USA and Canada. And that's been common since the 1940s, after the post-war, when there was a labour shortage in many of these countries. Some of that research focuses on the impact of migration on children who were left behind in their country of origin. And one of the things it talks about is that the attempts to integrate children into a host country with limited resources, a diverse and competitive culture, hostile attitudes, and inadequate migration support has many challenges for many of the young children who end up in those countries and then find themselves landed within the penal system. So I've already said to you about the disproportionate sentences of black young people in some of the countries that we're from. But also one of the other things that we're seeing is that more and more of our children, our young people, have learning difficulties, mental health problems. They've witnessed a whole range of different types of trauma. And although in the UK we say that children don't have life sentences, lots of critics would argue that going through the criminal justice system and coming out and all the implications of that indeed they do serve life sentences because it's a whole range of things. Caribbean children are vulnerable to engaging in antisocial behaviour and crime. They face challenges of discrimination, challenges in education, little social protection, and vulnerability to exploitation. So there is a racialized dimension to children's welfare systems internationally, which can be linked to diaspora communities. African Canadian children were reported to be overrepresented in the Ontario child welfare system with culturally inappropriate services and support, poorer outcomes for Black children, systematic racism, and structural inequalities. And there's another piece of research that says that 41% of African Canadians below the age of 15 live it below the poverty line, and they're more likely to enter the child welfare system. And you'll know that the welfare system and the juvenile justice, so youth justice, they're very much interlinked. So children end up going through a big cycle in that and end up very often in the prison system, where if they've been involved in the welfare system. So addressing those challenges, right, because we want to leave with something positive, is really a gender sensitive social protection issue. And it's crucial we think about how we do that. So one of the key solutions lies in investing and empowering women's rights organisations. We have to acknowledge and embrace the fact that they possess the knowledge, the tools, and the determination to reshape societies to be safer, more inclusive, and just. And when projects mobilise women as community facilitators and create safe spaces, they can better reach particularly marginalised communities and make prevention initiatives more effective and address violence. So we need to have an understanding of women's diverse realities. We need to know how different realities of women and influence their experiences of violence allows for them to be more effective in developing strategy and policy. We need to transform learning so that effective prevention requires training for behaviour change, tools like manuals, apps, and websites to reinforce best practice and strengthen institutional knowledge. We need to gather that knowledge. We need to look at flexible funding, adapt our approach, and crucially, address changing circumstances. And to effectively implement gender-based violence prevention laws, we need to get people like the police and the government on our side with proper training and have a shift in their mindset. And finally, I want to end on empowering young people. Adolescence, especially for girls, is a critical stage, and I heard that earlier today, for early interventions to prevent violence. Many projects choose to empower young women as agents of change to enhance the outcome of some of the interventions that we have. Youth-led initiatives by the diaspora are effectively raising awareness, driving policy change, fostering a more inclusive and supportive environment for women and girls in their countries of origin. They use their unique position at the intersection of multiple cultures and their first-hand experience of migration to advocate for social protection. So we need to harness all that great ideas that young people have because they are actively engaged in addressing the gender-specific challenges that face them. And they know more than anybody else what it is to be in those situations. By fostering solidarity and community engagement, youth diaspora organisations can play a vital role in building a supportive environment for women and girls and developing their resilience. Girls around the world aren't waiting for change, they are inspiring it. They are challenging injustices, they are defying cultural norms, they're demanding action, and they're giving their voice to some of the greatest challenges of this generation. Time and time again, they are demonstrating to all the world that girls are not the problem, they are the solution. The young girls leading for change cannot be the exception. If the world wants to see powerful change, they must invest in powerful girls. And we, all around here, right, we must be the advocates for this change. It is our responsibility to ensure that we lift up those young women to make change.